On the morning of May 31st, 1921, Greenwood was the wealthiest black community in the United States. 35 blocks, 600 businesses, its own banks, its own hospitals, its own newspaper. An economy that did not need the city surrounding it had made itself legally unavailable. By the following morning, it was gone. Not declining, not damaged, gone. That destruction took 16 hours. A mob, with guns the city of Tulsa had provided. A state commission confirmed in 2001 that Tulsa bore direct responsibility. No reparations have been paid. The Massachusetts state government sent 4 towns a different kind of notice. Not a fine, not a warning. A deadline to cease to exist. Dana, Enfield, Greenwich, and Prescott were told a reservoir was needed where they were standing. The bodies in the cemeteries would be exhumed. The church steeples would be dynamited so they wouldn't become navigation hazards. The government promised the displaced families a road. They built 6 miles of it, then they stopped. There is a sign at the end of that road. It reads, "Welcome to the road to nowhere. A broken promise, 1943. The sign is still there. On September 19, 1977, a 2-paragraph press release ended Youngstown, Ohio. 5,000 jobs. Gone before the ink dried. Youngstown had 170,000 people in 1930 and a symphony orchestra and steel in buildings across this country that have never once heard its name. The city eventually held a council vote, official, on the record, in a public meeting to plan for becoming permanently smaller. It was the first time in American history that a city officially decided it would never come back. 15 American cities. Each one had a date when the decision was made. Each one had a population that had done nothing wrong. Each one was ended by a force that came from outside. A government order, a corporate announcement, a mob, a dam. One of them has a Carnegie Library with a bucket under a leak in the roof. No budget to fix it. Another has a plaque. Where 10,000 people once lived, there is a plaque. Stay until number 1. Because number 1 was not submerged, not emptied, not left behind by an industry that moved on. It was burned. In an afternoon. With government weapons. And the city that burned it is still standing. Hi, my name is Thomas, and this is Lost History. This list contains 15 American cities that the country decided wasn't worth saving. Show your support for the channel by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let's get into it. Number 15. Pitcher, Oklahoma, Ottawa County. Lead and zinc mining began here in 1914. By the 1920s, Pitcher was the lead and zinc capital of the world. Peak population, 14,000. The mines supplied a third of the lead and zinc used in both world wars. The bullets came from here. What the mines left behind was 75 million tons of toxic waste, mountains of it, called chat piles, some 200 feet high. The dust blew through the streets. Children played on them, slid down their slopes, swam in the water below. By the mid-1960s, studies showed a third of local children had elevated lead levels in their blood. The EPA declared it a Superfund site in 1983. It took the government until 2006 to declare it formally uninhabitable and begin buying residents out. On May 10, 2008, an EF4 tornado swept through what remained and killed 6 people. Pitcher was officially dissolved in 2009. The chat piles are still there. The cleanup is ongoing. The Quapaw people are managing what remains. They were the first ones here. They will be the last ones dealing with it. Number 14. East Palestine, Ohio, Columbiana County. Population, 4,700. February 3, 2023. A Norfolk Southern freight train derailed on the edge of town. 11 cars were carrying hazardous materials. 3 days later, authorities conducted a controlled burn of vinyl chloride from 5 derailed tankers. The smoke column was visible from Pennsylvania. Residents were told the air was safe. The water was safe. They could return home. The health complaints started within days. Headaches, rashes, livestock dying. The initial federal emergency declaration did not include East Palestine's zip code. Norfolk Southern CEO did not visit for 2 weeks. A class action settlement of $600 million was reached in 2024. The official record still states the air was safe. Number 13. Flint, Michigan, Genesee County. Flint built the cars. At its peak, 80,000 people worked for General Motors here. A city that had built its identity around a single industry for 100 years. In April 2014, the city switched its water supply to save $5 million. The water was not properly treated. Lead leached from aging pipes into homes, into schools, into children. The state was told. For 18 months, the state said the water was fine. In January 2016, the governor declared a state of emergency. By then, an entire generation of Flint children had been exposed to lead, exposed to lead levels high enough to cause permanent neurological damage. A federal settlement of $626 million was reached in 2021. Lead pipe replacement is still not complete. The calculation that caused it worked out to roughly $1 per resident per day. That was the saving. The next 3 cities were not destroyed by accidents or cost-cutting decisions. They were taken apart, systematically, with legal authority and government funding. Number 12, Camden, New Jersey, Camden County. In 1950, Camden had 120,000 people. RCA Victor recorded music here. New York Shipbuilding built warships here. Campbell Soup had its world headquarters here. The building still has a ghost of Nipper the dog painted on the facade. The factories left through the 1960s and 1970s. The tax base left with them. By 2012, Camden could no longer afford a police department. It dissolved its entire force and contracted services to Camden County. Today, Camden is among the most impoverished cities in the United States. Not because anything natural happened, because the economic infrastructure that funded it made a decision to be somewhere else. Number 11, East St. Louis, Illinois, St. Clair County. The companies built their factories in East St. Louis. They incorporated them across the river in Missouri, where the tax rates were lower. For decades, East St. Louis provided the labor and absorbed the pollution and received almost none of the tax revenue. Population 82,000 in 1950, under 18,000 today. In 1917, one of the deadliest race riots in American history killed more than 100 black residents, displaced 6,000. The city had not finished recovering from that before the factories began to leave. The school district lost accreditation in 2017. Per capita income is under $14,000. There is no single event to point to, just a century of decisions made by people who did not live there. Number 10, Gary, Indiana, Lake County. U.S. Steel purchased 9,000 acres of sand dunes on Lake Michigan in 1905 and built a city from nothing. They named it after their board chairman, Elbert Gary. He never visited. At peak, Gary had 178,000 residents. Gary had a symphony orchestra, its own airport. In 1967, Richard Hatcher became mayor, one of the first black mayors of a major American city. The steel industry declined through the 1970s and 1980s. By 2020, the population was under 70,000. The City Methodist Church, built in 1926, stands open to the sky. Union Station, completed in 1910, has been empty since 1971. The Sheraton Hotel is abandoned. The buildings are intact. The man they named the city after never came once. The people who built it stayed as long as they could. The next city had a battle. The company that provoked that battle still closed the plant. 94 years later. Number 9, Homestead, Pennsylvania, Allegheny County. On July 6, 1892, Carnegie Steel hired 300 Pinkerton agents to break a steelworkers' strike at the Carnegie Works on the Monongahela River. The workers were waiting on the riverbank. The battle lasted 12 hours. 10 people died, 3 Pinkertons, 7 workers. Andrew Carnegie was in Scotland. He left his partner Henry Frick to manage it. Carnegie Steel became U.S. Steel in 1901. The Homestead Works expanded through 2 world wars. On July 27, 1986, the last furnace was shut down. The site of the Carnegie Steel Works is now a shopping mall called the Waterfront. The pump house, where they fought in 1892, is a national landmark. The battle took 12 hours. The mall took 3 years to build. 8. Mill Creek Valley, St. Louis, Missouri. In 1954, the city of St. Louis declared a 465-acre neighborhood on its near west side to be blighted. Mill Creek Valley had 20,000 residents. The vast majority were black. Under Missouri's Urban Redevelopment Corporation law, the city had authority to condemn and clear. It did. 4,500 homes demolished, 400 businesses destroyed, families given 90 days to leave. Promised redevelopment came slowly. Several blocks sat vacant for years afterward. Into the 1980s, some areas were still empty land. Residents had a name for what they were left looking at. They called it Hiroshima Flats. Number 7. Youngstown, Ohio, Mahoning County, September 19, 1977. Youngstown Sheet and Tube issued a press release. The Campbell Works was closing. 5,000 jobs, effective immediately. No warning. The announcement was the warning. This day is called Black Monday in Youngstown. The closures cascaded. Republic Steel, U.S. Steel. By 1980, 50,000 manufacturing jobs had left the Mahoning Valley. In 2005, Youngstown passed the Youngstown 2010 Plan, the first official document in American history in which a city acknowledged it would never return to its former size. The council vote was unanimous. Population in 1930, 170,000. Population today, under 60,000. The math is not complicated, but it took 28 years for anyone to say it out loud. What the next 4 cities have in common is this: a government that needed something and found the path of least resistance ran through someone else's neighborhood. Henry Kaiser's shipyards built Vanport in 90 days in 1942. It became the second largest city in Oregon, 40,000 residents at peak, roughly a third of them black. On the morning of May 30th, 1948, local officials delivered notices. They read, "Vanport is safe." That afternoon, a railroad fill gave way. The entire city was under 10 to 20 feet of water within an hour. 15 deaths are officially on record. The land became Portland International Raceway. Treme is the oldest African-American neighborhood in the United States. Its roots go back to the early 1800s, building a tradition of street celebration. In 1966, the city approved the construction of I-10 directly over Claiborne Avenue. The oaks were removed. The highway was completed in 1968. Every year, the community holds its Mardi Gras celebration under the overpass, in the shadow of the highway, in the space where the trees used to be. By the 1930s, half of St. Paul's black population lived in Rondo, 700 homes, 300 businesses, a community Roy Wilkins grew up in. When engineers planned I-94, 2 options were studied. St. Paul's city engineer opposed the St. Anthony route. The St. Anthony route was chosen for efficiency. Construction ran from 1956 to 1968. 1 in every 8 African Americans in St. Paul lost a home. Every summer, Rondo Days brings descendants back. Before Miami had a downtown, it had Overtown. Founded in 1896, black residents were barred from living anywhere else, so Overtown became everything. I-95 was routed through Overtown in 1965. The interchange, known as the Spaghetti, was built directly above. The population fell from 40,000 to under 8,000. 4 towns in the Swift River Valley. Families that had been in these hills since the 1700s. In 1927, the legislature passed the Swift River Act. 7,500 graves were exhumed, 650 structures demolished. The farewell ball for Enfield was held on April 27, 1938. The valley was flooded. Quabbin Reservoir now supplies 3 million people. Number 1 had none of this. No slow process, no legal authority, no decade of relocation. What happened to number 1 took 16 hours, and it was not an accident. On the morning of May 31st, 1921, Greenwood was the wealthiest black community in the United States. 35 blocks, 600 businesses, an economy built from within. What happened over the following 16 hours was documented and confirmed. A mob assembled. Private aircraft were used to fire on the neighborhood. By the morning, 35 blocks were ash. For decades, it was not taught. In 2001, the commission confirmed the city board direct responsibility. No reparations have been paid. Greenwood still has a street that carries its name. Every city on this list had a name, a main street, and people who had done nothing wrong. Most of them were ended by a decision made in a room they were never invited into. If your city belongs on this list, or if I missed one, put it in the comments. And if you want to know which American cities are still waiting for that decision, that video is next.